Can't have it all. Now, it's 8:09. Good morning. If you know someone who is living with dementia, you'll probably be all too familiar with the challenges that are faced by the loved ones who have to care for them.
You might remember a few weeks ago, Nina told us about her dad and her family's journey to get him diagnosed.
Well, it got an absolutely huge response. So, for our new series, Dementia, My Family and Me, Nina has been chatting to other people about their experiences. Take a look.
Devika?
Yes.
Are you happy?
Oh,
Are you happy?
I'm very, very happy.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I have been a full-time carer for my mum, who's been living with dementia now for 13 years, and my dad's recently been diagnosed with vascular dementia, and I'm very much involved in both of their care.
Hello everyone, my name's Wenda. I'm a full-time carer for my husband Don, who has vascular dementia.
Hello, I'm Jackie. I'm looking after my mum, who's 95 nearly now. She's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I've been looking after her now for nearly 2 years in my own home.
Hello, my name's Kiran and I was a carer for my grandfather since the age of 9, and he had vascular dementia.
Honestly, it's been really comforting for me and my sisters reading through so many of your stories that are familiar to ours. And it's sort of made us feel less alone, less isolated. But the volume of stories that you've shared just tells us something about how many families who are doing their absolute best, but despite that, just feel like they're drowning. I wanted to start by asking you, when you first realised something was happening and you reached out and realised you needed support, what was that like?
With my mum, which was 13 years ago, the actual process of diagnosis was pretty quick. But after the diagnosis, it was literally, right, your mum has Alzheimer's, early onset at 65, off you go.
There's no follow-up. You're then put under the care of your GP. Lovely though the GPs are.
They are not dementia specialists. Yes, you're there with social services, but social services are so busy, you're just one on their list. So to access any support initially was incredibly hard.
When you want the services, you don't want them in a few weeks or months' time. You want them now. And I think that's what's missing. It's the more immediate help.
When they talked about dementia, we didn't see faces like her, so we didn't think that our community is known for diabetes and high blood pressure and heart diseases. And then when we have dementia, or is there some Punjabi speaking care out there? How do we access that? And sometimes I think the government forgets that you're dealing with a whole range of people with different needs.
I want to ask you all about shame, because it's quite healing for me to hear so many people be really open about the fact that actually you can't always be your best self as a carer because you're under extraordinary pressure, the likes of which nobody could possibly understand until they've been there. Have you felt that guilt, Wenda?
Yes, I have, but I have to be so careful how I talk to my husband. Anything that I do that you would think is caring, he says is nagging. And I have to be so careful that I can't show any negative emotions, because he's got to the stage now where he gets very aggressive and he will punch and he will lash out. That's hard, incredibly hard. But I have found, because you search yourself, a wonderful dementia singing group that we go to every Wednesday for 2 hours together, and that is the highlight of our week. But as a carer, you're the one that has to find these things.
I just wanted to ask you, Jackie, about your identity. Now that you've become a carer, do you feel like a bit of you is lost?
Yes, I think I feel lost altogether sometimes, like I'm in the sea without a lifeboat. I don't do the things that I would normally do anymore. But it's very, very hard. It really is hard.
That's the thing I didn't feel ready for. That person who was the one who would always make sure I was okay and that I'd slept well and ate well, he's gone now. And that's a big adjustment when it's a parent, isn't it?
It's actually a role reversal, and nothing prepares you for that moment where your parents do turn around and ask you who you are. That moment is heartbreaking. She became frustrated and that projected into violence. That led to our demise in regards to our caring relationship because it just became too much for me. If there were suicidal thoughts about how I've let her down, and then you just lose your purpose completely. It's just gone.
What does it feel like hearing from and speaking to other people who are carers?
It feels like a relief. You know, it feels like we're talking about dementia and it's not like a hidden secret, and it's been a real pleasure like listening to other stories and finding ways that we can move this conversation forward as well without us being a secret, because it gets so challenging sometimes.
Gaining access to maybe people that have been through this is not that easy. You know, finding someone that's been through it and is like, you know, try this, because once you hear about certain situations, you realise you're not on your own, and that is a lifesaver on it by itself.
Nina is with us now alongside Paul Reynolds from the Alzheimer's Society. Morning. Paul.
Morning.
Nina, I think one of the most striking things has been the response to your original piece, which was hugely brave of you to do. And difficult, I know, really, really tough for all of you, for the family. But you're not alone, are you?
No, and it was really comforting, as I said in the piece, to know that we weren't alone. And when I talk about hundreds of responses, that's literally what it was. And they kept coming on social media, via email, people phoning in, people sent me letters, which I'm so grateful for, because it did make us realise that we hadn't got it wrong. Our sense was, have we missed something here? Should there have been earlier signs? Have we missed some sort of support that's out there? But so many families saying to us, no, we're in exactly the same boat. And there were recurring themes, and Paul, I'm sure this will be familiar to you, but things like feeling that sense of isolation when you go through a referral and then you're left to get on with it, and you think, I'm paddling here, not really knowing what direction to head in, taking over the life of another adult who doesn't really know what they're doing and doesn't necessarily understand that anything's wrong, is very, very, very stressful. And then also the themes of the financial impacts, which is massive for people living with dementia in their families. And then the identity of carers kept coming up. Jackie talked about it a lot, Wenda talked about it. The fact that you lose yourself because you can't go for a drink with your friends, you can't relax with your own kids, you become a carer, that's all you are as a person. And then the theme of guilt that I brought up because I'd lost my patience with my dad. At times I felt like I'd been unkind to him because I'd just run out of tether. And that guilt that you feel that's familiar to so many carers, because we're not trained. We're not trained at dealing with someone with a serious brain condition. And so you're doing your best, but not always being your nicest self. But then also lots of themes of people talking about the support that they've had from good GPs that have gone the extra mile, from mental health teams, from social workers, from people like yourself, from the Admiral nurses. So lots and lots of different issues, but the main one really was, what do I do when this starts happening?
OK, Paul, that sounds like the perfect place to bring you in, because I know that diagnosis can be very challenging. It can take years. Symptoms can be, you can pretend there's something else. The person can notice the symptoms and not want to admit to them or try to cover them up quite successfully for a long time. Once you get to a diagnosis, how do you at that point get help? Because it's not like there's a big army of people running in to help anybody at that point, is there? You've got to go and get it yourself.
Sure. Yeah, it can be really difficult. And like you say, diagnosis, sometimes it can take weeks, sometimes it can take years, depending on the type of dementia that the person has. And I think you often come out of that GP surgery with a diagnosis and then think, oh my gosh, well, what do I do now? And I've been in that position with my mom, and it's you know, like Nina has said, you're switched on and you think you know how to navigate things, but it can be really difficult. And I think that's why organisations like Alzheimer's Society and a host of brilliant charities and local community groups out there are so important, because they're filling this gap that is essential, you know, to provide help and hope to people who are living with dementia and all the carers affected by dementia, so that once you've got that diagnosis, you can speak to a trained dementia advisor who can help navigate the system with you and tell you the types of questions that you might need to ask.
And that element of guilt is one of the things that kind of has come through in all of this, isn't it? It's the moment, I suppose, particularly for children caring for their parents, of that role reversal. And then suddenly, alongside that loss of independence and that kind of lack of safety net anymore, that guilt that you might feel, how would you overcome those sorts of feelings and realise that that is normal?
Yeah. It is really difficult. It is a massive challenge because you do take it so personally. And I think what people who are caring do is focus on everything that they think they're doing wrong. And I think taking some time to think, actually, I had a really good day today, or I found out this piece of information and it might not help me today, or it might not help the person I'm caring for today, but it might be really important in the future. So I think taking those moments to kind of gather yourself and think, actually, you know, I have got this, I am doing a good job. Sure, it's tough and it's challenging, but I think I can focus on the positives. And that's why we have an online community called Talking Point, which helps carers connect with each other and share stories so that people don't feel so alone. And there's lots of community groups out there that you can join. And if people are wondering where those are, you can go on alzheimers.org.uk, and if you type in your postcode, it will tell you a local group that could be run by ourselves or by a charity locally that can support. And talking, like so many of the people who've responded to your incredible story have said, is really helpful because it helps you feel so much less alone.
It does, and sometimes that in and of itself is enough to lift the weight a little bit, because you think, you know, it's not just me, this is how hard it is for so many. I just want to read out, I mean, when I say there were literally hundreds of emails, but here's a few of them. This is from Caroline. My father passed away on the 1st of March, having lived with dementia for 3.5 years. Throughout his illness, we hit a brick wall after brick wall to find advice. We were discharged from hospital with no idea what to do. It was so scary, it was so stressful, and it's clouded our memories of our final years with him. Patricia wrote in to say, I was a carer for my late husband. My caring years took me to utter exhaustion. It's not just the exhaustion, but a whole range of emotions, particularly isolation, which you talked about. But something that people have brought up, and I want to really say about my dad at this point, because lots of his friends got in touch who haven't seen him for a while. Now he's in care, in good care, although the transition was difficult. I FaceTimed him at the weekend via my sister, and he's having a good time because he's not worried about his basic needs being met. And what I realise is for the past 5 years or so, his anxiety was overwhelming and it was making his dementia worse. Now he's getting fed, he's being bathed, he's being looked after. He's having fun again. He's going on day trips, he's asking about the grandkids, and he's becoming more coherent because he's not worrying about other things. And Julie has written in, echoing that thought. She said, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 8 years ago. It's been a roller coaster, but she's safe and well cared for now. We have peace of mind. For families who are struggling, I urge you not to feel guilty about placing your loved one in a care home. There comes a time when it's the best for everyone. And I think you have to accept when your mental health is suffering as a carer, and you have to accept the point at which you can't do any more, as difficult as that is.
Paul, I know one of the things, as Nina has been talking to us, that we've talked about guilt, haven't we? Lots of relatives really struggle with is, I guess, the pain of the person that they love not being that person anymore. It's grief, isn't it? You feel like you've lost one person, they're slipping away from you, and you worry for them, what they're going through. Nina talked about anxiety. Is this a situation where, though, for the people who are the carers, for the families, for the loved ones, in some ways, it's worse for them than it even is for the person who might be on that journey, on that dementia journey?
Yeah, it puts an absolutely enormous amount of pressure on a family. You know, I really resonated with the stories that came through. My siblings and I just felt such immense pressure and to do the right thing, and you know, guilt around how we handled the situation. So I think those connections and talking to people and raising awareness like we are today is really important. We have this campaign called Ultimate Vow because we know that people who are looking after people with dementia, friends, brothers, sisters, mothers, you know, daughters, sons, everyone, it's a family thing. It's that commitment to the person that they love and that dedication that really drives them through. And I just think people are so more resilient than they think. And of course they have these moments where they are just so upset and so, you know, overwhelmed by it. But that's why, you know, Alzheimer's Society is here. There are lots of organisations around the country that you can connect with and helps you feel less alone.
And Nina, I know we've talked a lot, haven't we, about how, you know, how devastating a diagnosis can be in terms of how you feel. But here you are, really bright woman, look at the job you do, business, politics, all of that. And
reasonably bright.
Okay, reasonably bright woman. And even you and your family struggled with the practical stuff, didn't you, to do with the financial changes around your dad's money, power of attorney, all of that's really hard, isn't it?
Just phoning up a utility company and saying, yeah, he's standing here with me. Yeah. You need to put him on. I can't put him on. As I've explained, he's living with dementia. You feel so panicky and so stressed, but there is a way through it. And once you get to the other side, life goes on and life is really, we feel very positive now. And I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who got in touch, because it's comforting for me thinking ahead to the next chapter with 3 out of 4 parents, grandparents who've had dementia, 1 parent who lives with dementia. I think, well, maybe it's coming my way. I want to feel like I'm heading towards that chapter of life, feeling like I'm informed, like I'm in power, and that I can live those years, God willing, with my family in a way that's different to the experience I've had.
Definitely more to talk about on this, Nina, isn't there?
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you as well.
Paul,
Thank you for everything you do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, much more to talk about. Keep your messages coming in, and thank you for all of you who are sharing your stories with us on this issue. We'll talk some more about that a little later, but let's get the news, the travel and the weather where you are this morning. See you soon.